Hey guys, it's been a while since I showed off anything to do with the mod, and that's because I got stuck in a time loop. I swear it wasn't my fault. So what have I actually been doing so far? Well, I finally got the main premise of the mod down. In the world of Cultist Simulator, there are 8 and sometimes 9 aspects that govern every part of reality. Each one serves as a mostly physical manifestation of some sort of concept or object. For example, the green one, also called edge or knife, represents combat and battle. Because, I mean, look at it, of course it does. And then there's winter, which is the snowflake one, or the light blue one, that represents death and endings. The primary aspects of Cultist Simulator form a sort of wheel, where each one feeds into another. For example, the two I just explained feed into each other. Edge, which is combat, naturally would lead to death, which is winter. So, combat or edge can subvert into winter. Each of the 7 main aspects follow this sort of cycle, but all of them can become knock because it's special, I guess. And then there's secret histories, which we're not even going to talk about because most people don't even consider that an aspect, and it's just kind of sitting there. But these 8 or 9 aspects form all of the interactions you will do in Cultist Simulator. So naturally, creating a content mod, I would want to add more aspects. And that's where what I've been doing for the past 3 months comes in. I have created 4 new aspects, them being astral, solar, lunar, and void. Since we are doing the Astrologist mod, it only makes sense for the new aspects to be space related, so there you go. So in order to get started with adding new content, we simply have to open up VS Code and pull up our modding project that I showed you starting last time. Now some of you may look at this and think, oh my goodness, this is not C++. But fear not, my friend, this is just JSON, which is essentially just plain text in disguise. If you're unfamiliar with JSON, there is a small little learning curve, but luckily, thanks to the Cultist Simulator modding VS Code add-on extraction plugin thing, we can just type in what we want, and it will write the JSON for us. So that way we can learn what all the formatting is and get used to it before we have to start writing it ourselves. Now here is a visual view of all of the new aspects I've added to the game. And as you can see, it's a lot, and I probably won't get into all of these right now, but essentially you can see the main 4 right here. Since most of the immediately recognizable colors were already taken by the base game elements, I had to add my own sort of color gradients in order to make them differentiable from the main game aspects. And here is what the JSON code looks like for all of the aspects so far. Now these are just the main aspects I've shown, and as you can see, it is really not super complicated. All we have to write is an ID to differentiate each of the aspects in the game's code, a label, which is what the player will see, and then the description, which is explaining what the aspect is about, and then literally just saying, is aspect true? So that the game can tell it's not just a regular card, and it is indeed an aspect. And just for reference, here's what the JSON for just a regular card looks like. As you can see, it looks almost identical to that of an aspect because the game's code handles them very similarly. Pretty much the only noticeable difference is aspect is just not here because it's not an aspect. There is one extra field here, which is the aspects field, which tells the game what aspects will be applied on the card. And I will show that in a moment. So here is the card that I just showed you the code for in-game. And as you can see, here's the title of the card. And if we click on it, there it is. There's the description we set for the card. And those 3 little boxes are each of the aspects in the aspect box. And hey look, there's our aspect that we wrote the code for. It is already in the game, just like that. But what even is this card anyway? What's it supposed to be? Reading the text doesn't really explain very much, does it? Since Cultist Simulator is a game about your character uncovering the dark secrets of the invisible arts, you have to learn those invisible arts. You don't just understand them right from the very beginning. So your understanding of each of the different aspects that govern the world is brought about through these little lore cards, like the one I'm showing you here. As you can see in the picture, there's a little ring around the aspect for lunar. And the ring slowly fills up the higher level lore you get, which represents your further deepening understanding of the aspect at hand. As you can see, this base card only has 2 next to the lunar, which means it can only apply up to 2 lunar. But the more you learn to understand lunar, and the higher level of a lore card you get, the more lunar it gets, naturally. Going from 2 at the lowest level, which is basically just a base level understanding, all the way up to 14, which is you understand the ins and outs and the very deep mysteries of the aspect. Which means that, yep, we have to make 7 different lore cards for every single aspect. So here are the 28 different lore cards for each of the 4 aspects I've created. But the game is called Cultist Simulator after all. What's the point of having all these aspects if we don't have a cult to help us invoke them? So each aspect has its own cult of people and followers who are dedicated to the purpose of that individual aspect, and you can choose which one you want to form each game depending on which aspect you want to follow. Now, that's all well and good, but I'm not here just to form a cult, so now we need ways to actually win the game. In the regular game of Cultist Simulator, there are 3 primary win conditions, and each of them is tied to one of the several different aspects. You can achieve immortality through enlightenment, power, or sensation, each of which has its own aspect path you have to follow in order to reach that goal. So for our mod, we will define 4 win conditions, each of which will be tied to one of the 4 aspects. So here we have integration, luminescence, duality, and equality. Each of these are new, exciting ways that you too can use to become immortal. And that concludes everything I have to show you today. Next time, we will start adding more JSON code so that the cards can actually interact with each other, and you as the player can actually use the cards to do things. They're not much use now, as they're pretty much just cards with text on them. Also, hopefully,